Good morning and welcome to Facebook Live. It's Tuesday morning and we're back on campus and we're ready for another tour to bring up some of the memories of your times back on campus. John Sautter, along with April Holleiter behind the camera from the Purdue Alumni Association, and it's our pleasure to bring you another one as we ease into season 2. We really appreciate all the viewers out there who have been in touch with us and write comments and offer suggestions. These have really been much more successful than we had ever envisioned, and so we appreciate all the folks who have stayed in touch with us, and keep it coming. So today we're back in the Purdue Memorial Union as we start season 2. We thought we'd come back to our roots and talk a little bit about history, some of the things about the building that you've been in here, and kind of revive some of those memories. We're starting up on the top floor of the Union today. We're right outside the anniversary drawing room. We're going to start there. We're going to walk down the hallway, past what used to be the women's lounge and into the faculty lounge, now called the West and East Faculty Lounge, and talk about some of the paintings along the way, that sort of thing. So a lot of great history here in this wonderful old building. It has so much character to it and just makes you feel good to be a part of it. And that's what we're going to try to highlight again today. So the anniversary drawing room, it goes back to the 16th century when they had withdrawing rooms, and where the families would retreat to take care of special guests and that sort of thing. And so even the name of it, the Union architects at the time wanted to maintain the name of the facility to kind of reflect the character, as they do with the faculty lounge. They don't call it a conference room or a meeting room, a lounge. So again, it maintains the character of the particular building. So we're going to go in, hey Bob, walk into the anniversary drawing room. And maybe you've been in here for meetings or receptions or special celebrations and that sort of thing. It's just a wonderful facility for a group of around 50 people or so. Next time you're back on campus with a reunion of your folks, this might be the spot you want to come to do that sort of thing. A lot of memories I can tell you from this particular room, from receptions, going away, retirement receptions for folks have taken place here. Actually, it was used that way in addition when Dr. Steve Beering became president in 1980. He wanted to start having trustee meetings in this facility. The trustees used to meet in the trustee meeting room right off the president's office in Hovde Hall. It has pictures of all the former trustees and all the former university officers, that sort of thing. He wanted to expand the meeting and start getting more visitors involved. And so he would have the meeting in this room, and the table, it would be set up similar to this, only much larger. The trustees would meet in the center, and then we on the cabinet, the support staff, would be on the outside, all with our nameplates in front of our seats, that sort of thing. And then this would be the gallery, right about here, right about where April is. In fact, if I could share one very positive memory myself, this is the room. This is where I was approved to be the vice president. In fact, I was sitting right here in the chair, and my impression was that I was so involved with what I was told was a procedural vote, that when they approved it, they said, "John, why don't you introduce your family?" And I had forgotten to invite my family, except they had actually slipped in behind me during the approval process. And so I was so proud to be able to see them there and proud of what was going on. It was one of those unforgettable moments in the family of John Sautter, all in this room right here. Also in this room is the first time we met Martin Jiske, who took over after Steve Beering. It was on, I remember, a Sunday morning, 9 o'clock, we were in the room. The table was in a similar shape, although there was an open end here, and Martin sat there and went around the table and asked each of us questions, and we got used to Martin Jiske very quickly that way, of his ability to ask wonderful questions of exactly what we were doing. He knew exactly what he was doing in terms of the leadership style and what he wanted to do and where he wanted to go, and it was just a wonderful time. So a grand old room. I do highlight the paintings. We're going to talk about paintings, and I want to be sensitive that we're not going to really talk a lot about all paintings in the rooms. Back in the day, a lot of paintings got donated to the university because folks would have a favorite instructor, faculty member, administrator, or maybe their members of their family had become artists, and so they would donate paintings. And they're pretty good size, as you can see. And so there's quite a few paintings in storage, actually, they tell me. But these are the paintings in this room. This one of the sheep is actually dedicated to President Eliot, Edward C. Eliot, our 6th president when he was here. The one in the middle is one that was done by an artist, Rhodes. This was his mother, and he wanted to donate it. And the one on the end is Brushfield, I think is the name of that particular artist. Also in this room, you can bring in a small grand piano that normally sits about right here. And so if you want to have a wonderful reception, particularly for weddings or special occasions, this is the spot. So now we're going to start making our way. If April doesn't trip backwards, we'll be just right here over the threshold. And we're going to start going down the hallway on the top floor. And as we do that, we're going to look above us here, and we're going to see where it's written the Union Club. And there's a story about that, the Union Club. Technically, this is part of the Union Club Hotel, and so they wanted to remind people that they were in the hotel. But if you peel back the layers of the story, in the hotel you could actually have an alcoholic drink, an adult beverage in the hotel, but you could not in the Union Building. And so the staff of the Union Building, this is in the 60s, 70s, and 80s now, started finding that some of their guests would actually be going out other places in town for special dinner meetings so they could have a glass of wine. And so their strategy at the time was, why don't we call this the Union Club, and the anniversary drawing room therefore becomes a part of the Union Club. They can have alcohol. Well, the higher level administration just didn't buy that logic. But in the late 90s, when we did get an alcohol policy approved, which we do have now, the entire Union Building was available for alcohol service, as it is now. Even in the football stadium, these days you can go to a football game at Purdue and get a beer in the stadium, which some of us are still having a hard time getting used to. The room next to the anniversary drawing room I wanted to mention was a conference room. Now it's actually the trustee meeting room. Trustees can have executive sessions in there, and there's a kitchenette. They can actually have dinner meetings and that sort of thing in that area. On the left, as we make our way down the hallway, this used to be the women's lounge. It was room 218 by number. Women's lounge. Below it, 118, is where the men's lounge is located. So right across from the women's lounge is the women's restroom. Downstairs, right across from the men's lounge, was the men's restroom. Because quite often we're asked, why don't we have men's and women's restrooms together in the same location as you see everywhere? And the answer was they were set up to accommodate the lounges at that particular time. Now in the women's lounge, they actually had a kitchenette. The women could actually prepare meals for themselves in between classes and all that sort of thing. We actually have a picture now of what it would have looked like back then. So this is the women's lounge as it would have looked like. Now it's been divided into offices, as a matter of fact, so it doesn't quite resemble that. But that is, when it was wide open, that's what it looked like. I'll call your attention to the window, because we're actually going to sneak in here and see if we can't see that window as it looks today. And so we're going to be coming in on the side and walking in here. So we're walking in. Hello, hello. We're just going to stick our head in the director's office just a minute. Okay. Okay. He's on a phone call. But if you can look in, you can see the window that we were talking about. That's actually in there. We'll just come. Zane Reif, our director of the Union Building, is now on video. Hello. Looking at the beautiful window. This is all part of the women's lounge. Thank you. That was a part of the Union back in the 30s and 40s or so. Back to the hallway, and we'll continue to go down the hallway. Past the South Tower, maybe some of you are familiar with the South Tower. The South Tower is actually the wonderful, the edifice above the entrance of the building. You can actually go up there, up that steep steps. It's not ADA accessible, it's not air conditioned, and it has no internet connection. So unfortunately we can't go back up there. It has its own history. And this is where Al Stewart used to bring a lot of the PMO groups to actually practice. There's a small stage and a piano. A lot of our student organizations still use that for practice, as a matter of fact. Now we're overlooking the Great Hall. The last time we were here, actually, there was a wonderful Christmas tree right here. We did a Christmas show from here, but now it has its ordinary look with the roped off cross, reminding us that this is a memorial union. And so you can see the different plaques that are dedicated to the students who lost their lives in the service of their country. Purdue grads who did that, and the busts of the presidents. Just a wonderful, wonderful setting. Walking down the hallway, now we're headed from, this is the 1924 original. The anniversary drawing room was actually added in around 1936 or so, at the same time that they added the browsing room. Just below it, there's another great name, the browsing room. And below that, they added the bowling alleys to it. And what were the offices? Originally, those would have been the registration desk for the Union Club Hotel. All that was added on in 36, and the anniversary drawing room was part of that. And now we're entering the what we now call the East Faculty Lounge. And just to give you a feel for what it looked like back then, very, very similar. In fact, we're standing right here where this same picture might have been taken back in 1936 or so. So you see the windows on the right, the fireplace on the left. Part of the union's challenge has been to maintain that look of the staff. In this room alone, there's 22 different pictures. And so here we start with, this is Abraham Shortridge, our second president, who is credited with getting the university started in 1874. Don't have a building named for Abraham, but they do have a school system down in Indianapolis named for him. A lot of the other paintings that you'll see in the corner and the back and some on the side here, they're actually former instructors. And so the woman here is a French teacher from 1917. Right next to him is Emerson White, our third president. James Smart, our fourth president, are here. Another instructor, a favorite faculty member is here. The faculty lounge can see close to 200 or so. A lot of wedding receptions these days are held in this particular room. They're set up for a banquet tonight. I just happen to know the Rhodes Scholar program is going to be here, which used to be the Elder Hostel program. The Rhodes Scholar program is going to be here this evening for a dinner in this particular room. We're now going to highlight some of the paintings around this room. And again, hopefully you've been in these rooms for receptions and those special situations, maybe where you receive recognition from a variety of programs on campus. From old masters to retirement receptions to welcome receptions to whatever it might be. So we'll work our way around the room and we'll walk by a fellow you might know, but we're going to talk about Ron Fruitt. I want to talk about Ron Fruitt primarily because Ron Fruitt is the guy who hired me and just a great guy to be around. Ron was at Purdue from the late 60s until he retired in 1996. His last tenure was the vice president for housing and food services. Ron was from Sydney, Indiana, married to Phyllis, just a great couple, became our good friends. Phyllis still lives around the corner from me. And a few Ron Fruitt stories I have to tell. One is Ron used to play basketball for the Sydney High School, but he also played in the band. And that was kind of a conflict back in those days. And so the resolution was he would play, run to the locker room at halftime, change clothes, come out, play the drums for the pep band during the halftime show, run back, change clothes, and finish out the game as a player. Ron was quite involved in campus and got involved with many organizations, the Reamer Club for one, and a variety of groups. Ron was wonderful at giving us advice all about having your own personal board of directors, he would call that, where each of us need to have our own board of directors that we're consulting as our careers advance and as we go through life's changes, that sort of thing. Who are the people that we can trust, that we can go to and kind of bounce decisions off, that sort of thing. Always talked about Maslow's need hierarchy, reminded us about that in what we did in housing and food service in terms of satisfying basic needs and as you work your way up to self-actualization and all that sort of thing. He was good at reminding us about those things. And when he retired, he continued his service. He actually ran for the county council and got elected to the county council, worked for a time in the Alumni Association, was quite involved in a lot of the aspects on campus. And so just a great guy. We're sorry that he has passed. Next down the hallway, side of the wall, is Fred Ford. Fred Ford was our executive vice president and treasurer for many years, our chief financial officer, right up until he retired in 1998 or so. He succeeded Lytle Freehafer, who succeeded R.B. Stewart, and between the three of them, R.B. came in 25 all the way up to 98. We just had significant positive financial decisions being made thanks to those three gentlemen. And Dr. Ford, who still is in town, Fred and Mary have the dining court named for them out on the west side of campus, just made significant contributions, maintaining what RB had started in the first place along the way, keeping the university strong, healthily, financially. Just again, a great guy to work for. I worked directly the last few years for Dr. Ford, and we're glad to have him, his portrait here in the faculty lounge. Then we work our way around this. We get into Winthrop Stone. President Stone was our fifth president. Stone Hall is named for him. Started our home economics department on campus, and we skip a few presidents. They have busts downstairs. Elliott, for example, has the Elliott Hall of Music, and so they have portraits displayed other places. This is the view from the podium of the room. And now we get into a nice history, and we're not going to touch on all these, and so, again, excuse me for not highlighting all of them, but this is just a great history of the women's deans that have been a part of Purdue from way, way, way back. And so we start on this wall with Dorothy Stratten. Dorothy Stratten was the Dean of Students from 1933 to 1942, full-time, which was just getting started back in those days. But he eventually left in 42 to go into the Coast Guard, and that's her uniform where she had a distinguished career, and eventually became executive director of the Girl Scouts, a great example of giving back to the local community. Next is Carolyn Shoemaker, who preceded her. She was the dean from around, I believe, 1913 to 1933 or so. First full-time dean of women, dean of students, dean of women, and she was actually an English lit professor. But they asked her to take on the job, and during her tenure, they really started to increase the responsibilities, let alone the office space and those sorts of things. She actually then succeeded Emma McCrae, who was the lady principal. She was also an English lit teacher. She actually hired Carolyn Shoemaker. She died suddenly, and that's when Carolyn Shoemaker was kind of thrust into the job. So we went from Emma McCrae to Carolyn Shoemaker to Dorothy Stratten, and we'll have three more down at the end here. We'll kind of pass by some of these folks. This is Henry Marshall, who was an acting president at the time. These were other faculty or administrators. This is Frank Hockema, who was the vice president, an executive dean. When he was at the university, had a great history to him also. We passed by Fred Andrews. Fred Andrews came out of the agriculture school, and he was the dean of the graduate school, and actually lived up next to Westwood. A great story about Fred Andrews. He was really like the Hansons when they were president. They lived next door, and in the springtime, Fred would always bring a bouquet of flowers to Nancy Hanson on his way as he came to work every day. We're going to end by talking about the three deans here. And that's Bev Stone, who was the Dean of Students from 1974 to 1983. Barb Cook, 1983 to 1987, and Betty Nelson, 1987 to 1995. Wonderful, wonderful ladies to work with, and I had the pleasure of working with all of them. Very nice to have them displayed here. So these and their predecessors just are just a great history of the women deans of women and then deans of students, and how they were integrated into the university. Betty is still around and active, and we see Betty quite a bit. In fact, there's a wonderful book written about the deans all the way back. The one missing, I might add, is Helen Schliemann. Helen Schliemann has her own building and her own larger portrait actually in her building on campus. But with all of those and these I've had a chance to actually work with, are really captured very nicely in Angie Klink's book, The Dean's Bible. And it really goes into much detail about their tenure and what they accomplished. But one line out of that I recalled is that the Dean's Bible, as it was called, was really a kind of a guidebook for leadership and integrity and for grace. And just those three words are so emblematic of these three women, and still Betty to this day, who is quite involved in a variety of community activities and really continues to leave her mark off campus in a variety of settings there, as well as on campus with Mortarboard and some other honorary organizations. So just great folks, great folks. So that's a little bit of the Union Building, the Anniversary Drawing Room, the Women's Lounge, and both faculty lounges. And we hope you've had a chance to kind of recall maybe where you're in some of these rooms, and we'll continue to watch. In fact, we'll be back in a couple of weeks. I think we're going to be back outside. We're going to go to the south side of campus, go down to the vet school, and be outside Lynn Hall and talk about what's going on down in that part of campus. And so until then, keep thinking about Purdue, think about coming back, and hail Purdue.